Again, we have number one New York Times best-selling author Melissa De La Cruz, and she's talking about afterlife. Good morning, Melissa. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Man, now you write about blue bloods, though you're not one. In fact, you immigrated to the United States with your family and you were 12. What accounts for your interest in Americans who come over on the Mayflower?
I think as an immigrant, we're always so much more interested in learning the history of the country that we've immigrated to. I think mostly because I didn't grow up knowing American history and learning it at a later date. When I was in high school was, really fascinating. I was fascinated by the founding fathers, and I read an article that said that, a lot of very prominent Americans can trace their ancestry back to the Mayflower. And it wasn't just people like, the Bush family or the Roosevelts. It wasn't just presidents and senators who could trace their ancestry back. It was people like celebrities, like somebody like Oprah can trace her ancestry back to the Mayflower as well. And I thought, oh my goodness, what if the reason why all these Americans are so prominent and rich and famous is because they're immortal vampires? And so that's where the people.
I can think of the biggest one of all, but that's another story. Now, what is it that attracted you to the world of old New York money and society to begin with?
I was a journalist covering high society and fashion in the 90s. So during that time, which was a little bit of the Sex and the City era, I was exposed to a lot of things that I found, kind of disturbing and fascinating, including some very, very sophisticated teenagers who are at these New York nightclubs. And so that all went into my book series, Blue Bloods. So it was a little bit of a love letter to New York City, to its nightclubs, to its traditions, and kind of this wonderful city that never sleeps. The perfect place for vampires.
I like that, Melissa. Now, how and when did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was 8 years old. I remember reading Dr. Seuss and these fairy tale books that my parents bought me, and just being just so fascinated and entertained by them. And I loved reading so much that I wanted to write books as well. And when I was 11, I read an article about the women who wrote Sweet Valley High, which was a book series for young teenagers. And the article stated that these authors were all around 22 years of age. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm 11. Maybe in 11 years I could do what they're doing, which was amazing to me because until then I thought all authors were either 95 years old or dead. I'd never heard of a living author.
Now, what is it about writing for a young audience that appeals to you?
I love writing for teenagers because at that time in our life, the world is just open with possibilities. Like you have no idea what you're going to be, who you're going to marry, who you're going to be. And so everything is just on your plate, and it's just such a fun time. First loves and first kisses, first heartbreak, first disappointment with the adult world. First rejection. And it's a great space to be in because I always say, bad boys are so awesome at 16. The guy with the motorcycle and that bad attitude is so exciting. But at 32, he's kind of a loser.
I'm not going to go there. Yeah, I'm not going to go there,
Everybody's
Melissa.
got to grow up at some point, even bad boys.
Yeah. Speaking of bad boys, now are you afraid of vampires?
I read Stephen King's Salem's Lot when I was a teenager, and I was very, very afraid of vampires. Absolutely. When I was a teenager, I thought that vampires might be real. I'm not a teenager anymore, even though I write for them. So I would say that these days I'm not as scared of them. But back then, when I was 15, 16, absolutely.
We've been talking today with New York Times best-selling author Melissa De La Cruz with about our blue books about afterlife and how vampires have taken over New York. But in my opinion, I think they've migrated to Washington, D.C. Melissa, thank you for joining us on Morning Blend.
Thank you so much for having me, and I think you're absolutely right.